What's going on, moviegoers? Last week, Wayward got back from a little trip to the snowy place I like to call Sundance Film Festival, and I'm here to talk about everything we saw. Now, we were lucky enough to see 11 films, including the Grand Jury Prize winner. I want to go through from the worst to the best, and explaining it all and exactly what you've got to look forward to this year. And there is a lot to look forward to. Let's start off with the weakest of the bunch. At number 11 is a little indie film called Goat, directed by Andrew Neil, starring Ben Schnitzer and Nick Jonas. Reeling from a terrifying assault, a 19-year-old boy by the name of Brad enrolls into the same college and fraternity as his brother. Now, what happens there is all in the name of brotherhood, as the relationship between the two brothers is tested in the most brutal ways. It starts off with, as I said before, the terrifying assault, which is when Brad, the younger brother, gets carjacked by these two goons after a party that he goes to with his brother. Now, the way this is shot, it is absolutely beautifully terrifying. The low light, the music, it ramps up, and the acting is perfect. This is the part of the movie I got really invested into, but as the movie started to go on, I started to realise it just didn't know what it wanted to be. I thought that Nick Jonas was a complete miscast of the older brother, as he's sort of depicted as the more violent one, but I never got that. I thought that the script was a bit of a mess, because at the first 40 minutes it started to create this sort of love interest for Brad with this other girl, and then just went nowhere. It just completely fizzled out, and you never see her for the remainder of the story. Now, what the story revolves around is the hazing scenes, and it really is just a spotlight on how fraternities are today, and they are brutal. They're really intimidatingly scary, disgusting, gross, everything you can think of. It is not American Pie. It's really cringeworthy. And I think that's what the director was going for, and I think that's what he aimed to accomplish. And in that respect, he did well. But I thought, as a whole, I thought that the movie didn't know what it wanted to be, and it was really annoying and disjointing at times. Now, number 10 is Morris from America. Morris is a 13-year-old African-American kid that is forced to move to Germany in order for his father to work there. From this, a small, charming, coming-of-age story is born, as Morris does all things from trying to win a talent show from gangster rap and trying to impress a girl by consuming all drugs and alcohol and everything. Starring Marquise Christmas, a complete newcomer that the director found on YouTube, and Craig Robinson, which is he's always funny in my eyes. Always funny, and he lived up. What I really liked about this movie is the relationship between the father and the son, Marquise and Craig. It was hilarious and unique. In particular, one scene where the father of Morris, he finds a rap that he's written for the talent show, and it's written in all explicit terms and everything like that, and I don't really want to repeat it, but and instead of being angry at him because of all the words he uses, he's angry at him because he's not writing the things that are true. I just think that's completely awesome. That's hilarious, and it's completely caught me off guard. And I thought, like, that relationship, which is the center of the story, was done exceptionally well. In that the director, who's also the writer, Chad Hartigan, won the Waldo Salt Screenwriting Award. I really enjoyed this film. It's a very coming-of-age, stereotypical sort of story, but it's got a lot of heart to it, and that's kind of what you want. And the colours and the cinematography bounce off the screen, and it brings the movie alive, and I really enjoyed it. I was fortunate enough to see 2 midnight films at Sundance. That means you go and see midnight premieres of horror films that are specifically brought for midnight premieres. And one of them is my number 9 pick, which is Carnage Park. Directed by Mickey Keeling and starring Pat Healy and Ashley Bell, Carnage Park is a very reminiscent horror film of 80s art house films. After botching an ill-conceived bank robbery in a desolate California town, 2 wannabe crooks grab a hostage and take him across town in a high-speed chase with the police. But after entering the lands of a psychotic ex-military sniper, a terrifying game of cat and mouse ensues. And that's where this film becomes alive. Ashley Bell plays the hostage, and she's getting chased down by Pat Healy, who is the ex-military sniper. And it is a fierce film. The music and cinematography is exactly like 80s art house films, which is really awesome, because I grew up with those art house horror films. I love them. They're really Tarantino-esque, and they rely purely on the visual stylistic template and the acting. Now, Ashley Bell from the last Exorcism movies, she did an exceptional job from creating this really strong female character that won't take any shit. Pat Healy played one of the creepiest people I've ever seen in a horror film. That you know that he just sees this as a game. He sees killing people as a game, and he feel like he loves it when someone enters his land, because as an American, they just get the right to shoot anybody, I guess. So if you're a fan of art house horror films, I definitely recommend it. Number 8 is another midnight film that I got to see, and I'm not ashamed to say it. It is the reason why I wanted to go to Sundance, because it was directed by one of my favourite directors. The movie's called Yoga Hoosers and it's directed by Kevin Smith. If you know Kevin Smith movies, you probably already know what this movie is. Two teenage yoga enthusiasts team up with a legendary manhunter to battle an ancient evil presence that's within a convenience store. I know. Perfect Kevin Smith. Now, I read heaps of bad reviews about Yoga Hoosers online, and I just gotta say, if you like Kevin Smith, you'll like this film. If you know what you're going into, which is which he's admitted, a really dumb, stupid movie with, corny humour, you're gonna love it. What I really liked it is because Kevin Smith didn't make this for the audience. He really made it for himself and his daughter, because the main characters is Lily Rose Depp, Johnny Depp's daughter, and Harley Quinn Smith, Kevin Smith's daughter. And you can just tell those two girls have been best friends for a long time, because it conveys it on screen. They work perfectly together. Kevin Smith's got his own style when it comes to his script, and it's dumb, more or less. It's really referencing all things nerdy pop culture, from comics, movies, everything. And this movie is no different. To the amount of Star Wars references, to the amount of nerdy cameos, it just blends so well that if you know what you're going into, you're just going to have a good time. Now, my number 7 film is called The Hollers. Directed by John Krasinski and starring John Krasinski, Anna Kendrick and Sharlto Copley. Now, John Holler, who's played by Krasinski, is forced to return to his hometown after learning that his mother is ill and is about to undergo surgery. That's basically the entire plot of the story. It's a very simple story, but it relies purely on the script yet again. It's sort of a movie like Little Miss Sunshine. Now, the script, as I'm going to say about most of these films, is great. It's hilarious on the point, and it's utterly heartfelt as well. There are moments in this movie that will make you laugh so hard that you're going to cry, and will make you so sad that you're going to cry in others. What I loved so much about this film, which I found common with Little Miss Sunshine, is that everybody in the family is nuts. The best relationship in this story, I'd say by far, is the relationship between the two brothers. It's a very simple film that hits on every heartfelt moment, and if you like those small town little comedies, then you're gonna love this. My number 6 film is The Fundamentals of Caring. Now, what sold me on this film before I even walked into the cinema is the one man who stars in it, Paul Rudd. I think he's the king of comedy for me. His humour, his personality, he's everything. He's everything I look for in a comic. Paul Rudd plays Ben. He's a man who suffered an incredible loss in his life, and so he enrolls into this caregiving program in order to change his perspective on life. He finds his way to giving care to this teenager named Trevor, who's suffering from a rare type of muscular dystrophy. As Trevor is a really routine sort of personality, every day he eats the exact same thing, he goes to the park at the exact same time, he watches TV at the exact same time, he naps at the exact same time. Every day is the exact same. He never leaves the house other than to go to the park. Ben sees it as more of a objective to make him live his life a little bit more, and offers the mom to take him on a road trip. And that's basically where the fun really begins, because this movie is utterly hilarious, and I can't believe I'm saying this. Paul Rudd is not the funniest person on screen. Craig Roberts is, who plays Trevor. He's absolutely hilarious. Everything that comes out of that kid's mouth is gold. It's so funny. You'll love this film in any capacity. All the jokes, to him faking death, to Ben listing the best public areas to pee in. It's so funny. It's such a beautiful, heartfelt story that I think is just cherished in that film festival. Now, my number 5 film is called Sing Street. Now, this is directed by John Carney, who's done Begin Again and Once. As 14-year-old Cosmo sees this girl across the schoolyard that he really wants to impress, there's only one thing that he can do: start a band. With his parents' divorce and attending an extremely religious school being in the way, he's forced to learn this lesson, and forced to teach his bandmates as well, that if they aren't themselves, who are they? Now, as I say again, this script is brilliant. The relationship between the two main brothers as well is particularly my high point, as the older brother of Cosmo wants nothing more than him to truly achieve what his ambitions want to achieve. All the 80s music pop culture references in there are excellent. They have music from all the main bands in the 80s, and such a great message at the end of just don't ever conform. If you're not yourself, who are you? Now, my number 4 movie creates one of the best performances I've seen at the festival. It's a movie called Frank and Lola, starring Michael Shannon and Imogen Poots. The film tells a story about Frank, who's a Las Vegas cook, and he falls in love with a lady named Lola, who's a new girl in town. Betrayal and forgiveness ensues as Frank is kind of consumed by an obsession of Lola. I don't want to spoil anything because this is really a unique story. It's nothing like an average romance story, but it's really to the point nose and it's very indie. And if you like those really art housey sort of stylistic independent romance stories, but you know that it's going to be a little bit hard, then you'll enjoy it. And Michael Shannon is excellent in it. I think it might be his best movie of his whole career, other than his cameo in The Night Before. Now, my number 3 spot goes to Swiss Army Man. Now, by the director duo of the Daniels, this movie is very unique. That's the only word I can really describe it. I don't want to say too much because every bit of this movie is best just to see, but the whole story is basically revolves around the character played by Paul Dano, named Hank. Hank is a man that's deserted on this random island that you got no idea how he got there, and he's about to kill himself, and then he sees a dead body just wash up on the shore. But then you realise that that dead body, played by Daniel Radcliffe, brilliant, is not so dead. That's all I can really say without giving anything away. Then Hank kind of befriends him, and then they both teach each other the world again. I can describe it as absurd cinema at its best. I think it got really low reviews at Sundance because not many people understand what absurdist cinema is, and they don't appreciate it. They think it's just a fart joke for the whole film, but it's really not. It's for the first 20 minutes. And the director duo actually got the Director's Award for the Grand Jury, which I absolutely think that they deserved, because seeing the first 10 minutes of this film, the look of it is beautiful. And the whole story is just these two characters with one of them dead. And it's so captivating that I just think that if a director that didn't deserve that award did it, it wouldn't have made me stay in my seat. Now, when it comes out, you're going to get a whole lot of people saying it's just a 90-minute fart joke. Trust me, just go see it and then you just know it's a really absurd film, but you'll love it. Now, my number 2 film, we're getting up there, is Captain Fantastic, directed by Matt Ross and starring Viggo Mortensen, Aragorn himself. Now, the whole film is about this father who's determined to raise his children in a forest away from society, to determine that they get taught all the right lessons that children should be taught. Then something happens that I don't want to say that brings them back to society, and from there some hilarity ensues. Now, all the kids in this film are brilliant. They each play their part perfectly. Some as old as 6 years old, and they're so good. The cinematography is perfect. Now, one thing I got to say about this film is that at first I thought that it ended 20 minutes too late, but then I started thinking that this is not a normal film. If you watch it, you'd understand this is a really unique film that is completely out of the norm. And if it stopped where I thought it should stop, it'd be like other films of that nature. This is a film of its entire own genre. So how it's ended is perfect for it because it's so weird and unusual that it fit the story so perfectly. It fit this family perfectly. I just purely loved this film because these kids, this father, this whole family worked so well together that it really just felt like watching a window into someone's life. Now, my number 1 movie was going to be Captain Fantastic. That was until I got a ticket to the Grand Jury Prize screening, and that was for The Birth of a Nation. This movie is directed by Nate Parker, and it stars Nate Parker and Armie Hammer. Nate Turner is a former slave of America, and he becomes a preacher of his plantation. He then travels to other plantations to speak the word of God, in that his master, who's played by Armie Hammer, gets paid. He then, along the road, he sees the terrible atrocities at each plantation, and he starts to think in his head that this isn't right. He then leads a liberation in 1831 against the whites to free the African Americans in Virginia. Now, this movie is so disturbing. I literally couldn't talk to anyone for about half an hour after I saw it, but I kept thinking that this is the movie that will win Best Picture in 2017. This is by far the best film of the festival. This is by far the best acting of the festival. This is by far the best script of the festival. This film is perfect. Nate Parker has been working for 7 years to get this film, and he did an incredible job. Also, I think that he should be the next Green Lantern. He's perfect as him. Jon Stewart, he'd be awesome. This film does not hold back, and I applaud it for not doing that, because this is a type of story, like 12 Years a Slave, that it needed to be told. No one can ever forget that period of time. And for this not to hold back, this film I think is much more brutal than 12 Years a Slave. And for that to happen, I think is great. Sundance Film Festival was truly the best week of my life. It is a truly magical place, and I'd absolutely recommend it to any film buff, film goer, film enthusiast, anybody that loves film. I can't wait to go next year, but until then, please read the reviews on waywardreview.com, Twitter and Instagram, links in the description, and just have a great day.